And good afternoon, and welcome to the Inspired Team Leader Show. I'm Norm Prevost, and I am joined with my co-host, Heather Hanson O'Neill. Are you there, Heather?
I am here and I am super excited to be here.
Yes, it's going to be a good show today.
Definitely.
And the reason it's going to be a good show, other than just because Heather and I are here, is we are joined today with Corey Bach. And Corey is the Director of Organizational Development and Learning at Johnsonville Sausage. He is also an author, keynote speaker, and an expert in building leaders, a reputation he has earned over 20 years of leading in the military, in business, and in politics. He is a graduate of and former leadership instructor at the U.S. Naval Academy and is a former naval flight officer. Corey led award-winning brand and event marketing teams at General Mills, Newell Rubbermaid, and Johnsonville Sausage. He is also the author of The Lens of Leadership, Being the Leader Others Want to Follow, and that was published in 2013. Good afternoon, Corey.
Hi, Norm. Hi, Heather. Great.
Yay.
And I pronounced your last name wrong, and I apologize for that.
That's okay. I've been called a lot worse.
We don't need to get into that right now, Corey. Okay?
No, we don't. So, Corey, advising on leadership can sometimes be a case of those who can't do consult. What makes you worthy of listening to?
Well, I tell you, Norm, I think what makes me worth listening to is the very background. I actually led and led successfully under very different types of circumstances. As you said in the intro, I'm a military leader. I led a crew, flew missions over Bosnia, flew missions throughout South and Central America in the war on drugs, and throughout Central Europe. So I have military leadership experience. I went back to the Naval Academy and led a team of 9 PhDs in the administration of the core advanced leadership course there. So I've led academics, and that's a whole different kind of leadership. I earned an MBA and got out and went to work for 3 fantastic companies with different personalities, but had responsibility for top line and bottom line results, working with external agencies and internal constituents. So there's that business, that core sort of business delivery leadership. And then I also am a twice elected political official too, working with Madison, which is my state's government, and Washington D.C. to do things for my constituents. So so I think that broad background, that very different kind of background, and then I've been in the learning space for about 6 years now, training and development, industrial, corporate training for about 5 or 6 years. So I think you put all that together, and there aren't many folks who have led in those kind of different circumstances. And I'll tell you, the one thing I learned was to be successful in those very different kinds of business, those very different kinds of background, was I only really had to do 3 things to be really successful, and that was serve my customers and help them deliver better results, whatever that meant for them.
Yeah.
Build leaders, whether that was my job to do it or not. You always got to be building people's capabilities, and then to inspire others to become more than what they think they're capable of. You can get a lot out of people when you do that.
Now you're speaking our language, Corey. I'm loving this. If you had to pick one thing that of these 3 or something else that has really helped you the most across the board with all of your different background and leadership in the different areas that you've been a leader, what would you say has been most helpful for you?
Well, I think that attitude of serve, build, and inspire is important. And one of the foundational things that, and it's sort of the core, the beginning third of the book is about followership. And we can talk about that now, or we can talk about it later, but it's that idea that, my success is tied to my ability to make my boss and my team look great and be successful as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, why don't you go a little bit more into that, Corey? Your book does start with that, so let us start with followship.
Okay, great. Well, so when I speak out in front of groups, corporate groups, and big rooms, conferences, I begin by asking them to raise their hand if they think it is their primary or most important job to make their boss look good. And usually only 10-12% of the attendees ever raise their hand. And I said, that's okay. Because it's going to be my job to convince you that what I call followership is both honorable and it's the most career-enhancing kind of leadership. So followership out there has a little bit of a bad rap because people don't see it as a form of leadership. So what I want to do is I'll define it for you really quickly. I call followership a set of learnable, practicable skills that make me professionally essential to my boss and teammates. So it's a set of learnable, practicable skills that make me professionally essential to my boss and teammates. And then the second clause is what makes it really powerful. And it also regularly creates opportunities for me to demonstrate my superior leadership skills. When you get the first part right, when you make yourself professionally essential to your boss and teammates, no matter what level you're in an organization, then that will open doors for you to demonstrate your superior leadership skills. So that's kind of what it is, but I also want to just be really clear about what it isn't. It's not some sort of old-fashioned, industrial age, wait your turn, kid, sort of mindset. Followership is not the flip side or reciprocal state of leadership. It is its own form of leadership. And business icons you all recognize. Sam Walton started a little store called Walmart. Malcolm Forbes, the head of the Forbes financial empire. The last two CEOs of Procter & Gamble, Lafley and Bob McDonald. Wendy's Dave Thomas. Fred Smith from FedEx. Leonard Lauder of Estee Lauder. The current chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. Current CEOs of Johnson & Johnson, 7-Eleven, Clorox, Verizon, even Duke University's Coach K, Coach Krzyzewski. All of those people I just mentioned practiced followership relentlessly as they grew their business and grew their careers. So followership opens doors and is the first form, what I call the first form of leadership.
You know, what's interesting with that list that you just mentioned is that while you know the companies, you don't always know about the people that you mentioned. So it's obvious that they're in it more for the company or the people within the company rather than themselves.
And that's why great followership is a form of servant leadership. It's an early form of servant leadership. And if you're great at followership early in your career, you will be very likely to grow into being a servant leader with that servant attitude once you are responsible for others. And that's sort of where followership fits in. Followership begins, in my model, it begins with serve, but it starts before you're a leader. It starts as a follower, and then followership never ends because everybody has a boss. You have a boss. Go all the way up your organization. Even the CEO, has a boss in the board of directors. So once you learn great followership skills, followership never ends. Leaders are sort of in the middle. They've got to lead down with their leadership and serve those that they lead, but they can never stop leading up with their followership and serving up with their followership because everybody has a boss.
Wow, it's an interesting concept. I actually never thought of it that way. So yeah.
No, I was just going to add on to that it is, and a lot of the best leaders, CEOs that I know consider even the customers as being their boss, as being the ones to drive what they do, as well as their employees and their team as listening, and so that feeds into what you're talking about serving.
Absolutely. And once you get that mindset of, and so many, when I speak to millennial audiences, almost nobody raises their hands because they see this whole concept of followership as being somehow demeaning or, beneath them. And that's not it at all. Because we all have a boss, even if you're the even if you're the COO of a $14 billion international conglomerate, you still got a boss, right? And your best path to success is by making that person successful.
Right. Absolutely. So what does it take to be a great follower?
I have 4 roles and 4 skills that lead to great followership, and it's an outgrowth of my experience, in all those different career paths. And so there are 4 roles, and the first role I call a valet as a follower. And I don't mean the kind of valet that parks your car when you go to a great restaurant. I'm talking about the kind of valet that Alfred is to Bruce Wayne and Batman. I'm talking about the valet that John Bates is on the BBC series Downton Abbey. A great valet is somebody who outfits somebody with whatever clothes and accessories they need, whatever the day is going to call for, and prepares them for success throughout that day. And so, how you can be a valet in your role as a follower is, all coaches and all bosses have weaknesses, but you can't let your team fail because your boss has weaknesses, and sometimes bosses don't even see their weaknesses. So as a valet, you just got to be good at what they're not good at, and supplement their gaps. And by making sure that the team doesn't fail because the leader has an opportunity or a gap, that's a way that you can be a valet.
Nice. That's really interesting stuff. So, Corey, we have a couple of minutes before we go to our first break. How about you set up talking about how you can build great followers on your team? And
well,
then
wait.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There are a couple more. That was just the first of 4, wasn't it?
It was. And I can do the next 3 real fast. I can probably fit the next 3 in before the break.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
The second role is a Socrates-like mentor. If you know Socrates, what does Socrates do? He asks great questions, right? But in order to ask those challenging, counterintuitive, provocative questions, he had to be really, really brilliant. And so in your role as a follower, you can't just know your job. You've got to know your boss's job and sometimes your boss's boss's job so that you can ask those provocative, strategic questions that are a little over your level. The third role is that of a chameleon. You got to know when you need to stand out and when it's okay to, blend in. That's another thing that millennials have a hard time doing. They often want to receive credit for every single thing that they do. And as a follower, sometimes, people know who deserves the credit and the word will get around. So if you can make others look great, the reputation's going to get around that you're somebody who enables that in others. And the final one before we go to a break here is what Jack Welch called the pastor-parent role. Pastors hear the sins and complaints of the organization without recrimination. And parents love us and nurture us, but they make us take our medicine when we're off track. And so if you can do that, if you can be a pastor-parent to your boss and teammates, that's you having earned becoming a real go-to influencer with your boss. So those are the 4.
That's awesome. We're going to our first break, and we will be back with Corey Baus.
Out.
And welcome back to the Inspire Team Leader Show. I'm Norm Prevost, and I am joined with my co-host today, Heather Hanson-O'Neill. Hello, Heather.
Hello.
And we are also joined with Corey Bauk. I'm probably...
No, that was awesome.
That was just right.
Perfect. I'm finally getting it right. And we were talking about followership and what it takes to be a great follower. And Corey, you had mentioned there were 4 aspects of being a great follower. You want to review those for us?
Sure. There are those 4 roles. And that, if you can be a facilitator of the success of your team, an enabling valet, sort of a provocative internal consultant, know when to stand out and know when you don't need to stand out. And if you can, earn that trusted advisor role, you'll be leading through your followership. Those are the 4 roles of followership. So the roles are this mindset, how I can serve without being subservient. Mm-hmm. The skills, the 4 skills of followership remind us what we have to do to lead through our followership. So the 4 roles come from some of the best career wisdom I ever received, and it was in I was reporting aboard my first operational squadron in the Navy. I'd been to flight school, knew how to fly, was showing up now at the squadron that would teach me how to fly the plane that I'd be flying with P-3 Orion. And everybody out there listening has been a rookie on a sports team, we've all had new jobs, right?
Right.
Well, being what we call a nugget in naval aviation is kind of like parachuting down onto the island in Lord of the Flies. It's a really, really hyper-competitive environment. Weakness stands out right away. And so everybody wants to be strong from the very beginning. And so I got this piece of advice from a guy named Terry, who was just glad not to be the nugget anymore because I was the new guy. And he scratched down, he was going flying, and he made sure I understood that I wasn't worth very much yet because I wasn't qualified to fly in the plane. He said, here, just do this. And he wrote down 4 things on a sticky note that I still have under lamination on the wall in my office. And he said, be productive, be innovative, be the expert, and be polite. And if you can do those 4 things around here, Corey, in 3 to 6 months, you'll have the knowledge and relationships you need to be really successful around here. So those are what I call the 4 skills of followership. So the first one is be productive. And it kind of sounds like a blinding flash of the obvious, but whatever you do for a living, you're producing something. It might be an intangible. Even if you're an actor, you're producing emotions and producing, entertainment. But maybe you're producing spreadsheets or you're producing analysis spreadsheets or a marketing plan. Whatever you produce, earn a reputation for being a high quality, high volume producer of whatever it is your company pays you to do. Earn that reputation for being somebody who solves the problems of others by being productive. So the first skill is if you can be productive. And again, remember, these are followership roles, and followership never ends. So sometimes when we become leaders, we think, well, I'm a leader. I don't have to do those things anymore. But we all have bosses. So we have to be productive in ways that help our boss and our team be successful. The second task, or the second skill, is be innovative. And I do this thing in a room. I'll ask the millennials to take a little time travel with me, and I'll ask the boomers to raise their hand. And I'll say, when the boomers were brand new to their job, there were 3 television networks, and television went off at midnight because who would want to watch TV after Johnny Carson, right? And there was this quaint little thing called a newspaper that showed up on everybody's porch every morning, and everything in it was already 5 or 6 days old, sometimes a week, but everybody read it every day. And so under be innovative, look at how far we've come in one professional generation. The boomers are on their way out of the workforce. Who knows what work and the workplace will look like when the millennials are the most experienced people in the room. I don't know what that looks like, but I know for us to get there, it's going to require an awful lot of innovation. So whatever you do at your company, be innovative. Enhance the way you and others around you think and the way you solve problems, and that's going to bring innovation. So that's the second skill, is innovation. Third skill is be the expert. And again, another blind flash of the obvious, but there's no substitute for having an incredible amount of competence in your daily work. And the reason I think it's important to revisit that is because I think people get comfortable, I think that for boomers and Xers, nothing will hurt your career more, damage your influence more quickly than an obvious lack of current knowledge and current skills. And for the millennials that are listening, nothing will set you apart earlier or more obviously in your career than a quick, broad knowledge of the business model of your company. And again, it goes beyond your job. You got to be conversant on what are the environmental forces driving the category your company competes in. What are the macro and microeconomic forces? What are your customers' pain points? What's your competition doing to steal your lunch money? So having that incredible amount of competence, being an expert, will earn you recognition and visibility, and that will help you deliver on the second clause in that followership thing about it'll earn you opportunities to demonstrate your superior leadership skills by being an expert.
That's awesome stuff.
Go ahead.
Heather, speak.
No. I'm just loving it. So okay, but I productive, innovative, expert status. Go ahead.
And now be polite. And Terry's advice was great. Everybody thinks in the military you can just get away with doing because I say so, and that's so not the case. And his advice was pure gold, and it's certainly in the civilian workforce. There are lots of ways to be impolite in today's workforce. It's the eye roll, it's the raising your voice, it's the pointing your finger. But I have found in my time in my career that you can compete vigorously, you can disagree, you and I can disagree wholeheartedly, and we can cling to the ideas and projects we love while still maintaining the manners, we require of our young children. I think what people who do those things, who point their fingers and stand up and raise their voice and get a little grumpy, I think what they miss two things. One is their reputation is going to precede them. So they're not going to earn that ability to get on those cross-functional teams that will earn them more opportunities to lead. And the second thing is that they're going to not make the essential friendships and mentorships that are so important to a modern career, because nobody wants to mentor the jerk, right?
That's right. Right. You're right. That's so important. It really is.
So going back to just that sticky note that hangs on my wall, my squadron mate Terry's advice is easy to remember, and it's the best career advice I've ever received for being a standout. Be productive, be innovative, be the expert, and be polite. And if you can just do those things, you'll really stand out. So many people just aren't willing to do those things.
They're not willing to get a little uncomfortable, but actually that discomfort of maybe doing some of these things is exactly what will ultimately make you happier and better leader.
Absolutely. And as leaders, again, we can't forget that we have that dual role, what I call a paradoxically simultaneous role of being a leader to some and a follower to others.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Yeah, you know what? I was just talking to a friend of mine whose friend came back from the service, and she was talking about how different and how, in particular, the politeness was just, it was like night and day. And I'm guessing that a lot of that comes from that background that is in your experience as well, Corey?
That's part of it. And, you know, my mom sent a pretty polite boy into the service, too.
Kudos to mom. We always got to recognize mom.
Right. And I'll tell you, anybody who out there is listening that has an opportunity to hire veterans, I tell you what, they have so many. When I was working at General Mills, I was on the recruiting team for recruiting other MBAs to come to General Mills. And I asked the head of recruiting there why, because we in General Mills at the time was going out of its way to hire JMOs, which are former junior military officers. And he said, you know what, I can trail a big fat check through any top 5 MBA campus in the country and get smart people. What I can't get out of those MBA programs is somebody who will step up to leadership even when it's not their job, who will, you know, be tenacious about getting the job done. They'll never let anybody down. They'll get stuff done ahead of schedule. They'll do it. You know, the sense of mission is unbelievable. And actually, when I hire JMOs, even when they don't have great MBAs, they come here and they shine because they take leadership roles. So anybody out there who has a chance to hire veterans or at least interview some veterans, you know, they may have a hard time conveying why what they did is important to you, but know you're getting somebody who has been a leader, who delivers under any circumstance, even the real difficult circumstances, and they will fill in any leadership void or any task void. They're all about getting the job done. And they'll do it with a spirit, a team spirit. They know all about teamwork and camaraderie. So that's just a quick plug for if you get a chance to get some veterans in front of you, please do that, because you'll be getting a product that is at least on par with what you can hire when you hire somebody who's maybe technically more proficient.
That's excellent advice. Thank you, Corey. And if any of our listeners have a question for Corey, Heather, or myself, you can call us at 888-475-9405. So I know we're going to be going to our next break in a couple of minutes, but get us started on how do you build followers on teams, and how do you lead teams?
Sure. So I do it the same way. I build followers the same way I build leaders, and the same way I build cohesive teams. And it's my serve, build, and inspire model. My whole book is structured that way. And you know, the serve is serving as a follower, and then serving as a leader. And then build is building your own skills, and then as a leader, building the skills of others. And then inspiring in both roles, follower and leader. You just gotta inspire the heck out of people, because that's what they're so hungry for. So the Serve, Build, Inspire model, Ken Blanchard, who probably everybody has heard of, Ken Blanchard calls the Serve, Build, Inspire model a real a blueprint for building great, successful leaders. And I'm not sure are we doing okay on time?
Yes, we're doing good.
Yeah,
okay.
We have Go ahead, Corey.
Yes, so you can't go wrong by, recognizing your role as a servant, and then always taking responsibility for building your own skills. But then when you become a leader, you inherit what I think is one of the most noble components of being a civilian leader, or any leader, is suddenly you've got the careers of others in your hand, and the skills, the ability for them to put food on their table and provide for their family. That's to some degree in your hands too, because you're opening up doors and you're making sure you're pushing them into uncomfortable places where they're increasing their skill set, even though they may not want to or may not see the need. You're pushing them to a point where at the end they come out more capable and better to contribute to your organization, but also, if they don't stay with your organization, to better contribite to their own life and their family's life. So you build their skills. And then there's a chapter in the book under inspiring your teammates to become like hybrid cars. It talks a little bit about the research behind motivation, how we truly can't motivate anyone else. But what we can do is install in them a rechargeable battery and teach them like a hybrid car to be able to recharge their own battery. When you're running on your gasoline engine in your hybrid car, it's charging your battery, so your battery's always ready to go. And if you can create people who can self-charge their own motivation batteries by giving them work by giving them a purpose.
That's excellent. We'll get more into that when we come back from our break.
Hello and welcome back to the Inspired Team Leader Show. I am Heather Hansen O'Neill. Norm Prevost is with us. Say hello, Norm.
Hello, Norm.
And we are very excited to be speaking to an incredible guest expert today, Corey Balk. And he, before we went to our commercial break, was talking about inspiration. We're going to ask him to delve a little bit deeper into that because, as the name of our show implies, the Inspired Team Leaders Show, we are all about the inspiration. So we're going to ask him more about that. But before we do, I would like to just encourage you one more time. If you're interested in asking a question of our guest, Corey, or of Norm or myself, the number is 888-475-9405. I also want to encourage you to join us back next week at noon Eastern Standard Time for an incredible mystery guest. I don't want to build this up too much, but it's a CEO of a rapidly expanding, really incredible company that has some very innovative leadership strategies that I think you're going to want to know. I can't tell you who it is yet. It is a mystery, but I do suggest that you come back next week at noon. You won't regret it. So, Corey, tell us a little bit more. Let's delve into this inspiration and maybe a specific tip that you can offer our leaders to inspire their team.
Sure. So when I left the military, it was a big decision because even a bad day in the military or a mundane day, you can wrap yourself in the flag and say what I'm doing is important. And I thought about where will I find nobility, where will I find importance and purpose out in the world of kids cereal and sausage and kids toys. And it took me a couple of years until I found it. And what I realized was that all leadership is noble. That when you raise your hand and say, you know what, look to me for this decision, the results of this decision, when you raise your hand and say, look to me for that accountability, there's a lot of nobility in that. And when you raise your hand and say, you know what, look to me for the development of these people, and look to me for the results that these people deliver, that is equally and even more so, more noble. And so I actually, the ending of section of my book is about how all what do you do when you put yourself out there and say, I'll be responsible for these results and these people? There's a lot of nobility in that. And so it's up to the leader to help the members that they coach. And that's what we call, at Johnsonville, we call coaches, we call all leaders, all supervisors coaches. If you hear me say that, that's what I mean. But it's up to the coach or the supervisor to find a way to bring nobility to what they do and to help their members, the people they coach, see why what they do is important. And if you can do that, that's how you're going to turn your people into hybrid cars, people who can, charge their own motivational batteries.
I love that. I love the analogy of the hybrid cars and charging the battery, because I think we do have to do that for ourselves as leaders, for ourselves as followers, and to encourage our team to be able to do that, to inspire them to do that. That's fantastic. I also, I'm just wondering if there's any story that you have about a specific inspiration or someone who was an inspiration to you, just something that you can share, because I love when you tell your stories, that it really drives the point home for our listeners.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that teams and leaders can be high performance and be excellent is by being ready for what I call moments that count. And moments that count can be, depending on what role you're in, they can be really life-changing events. You could be a lifeguard and save somebody's life. But here's an example of a moment that counts in a much more business context. So every once in a while, I go out and I work in our plants to stay close to the members and stay close to the challenges that they're having and what are their learning needs and just what's going on in the business. And they don't let me do too technical jobs because I'd screw up the sausage, right? But there are some jobs that they let me do. And so one day I was paired with a young man named Brett. And Brett inherits 10 strangers every day from our temporary labor pool at 5:30 in the morning. They don't know Brett. They don't know sausage. They don't know each other. And he inherits what I sort of call the Bad News Bears, if you remember that sports team from the movies, right? The dysfunctional sports team. And he takes the Bad News Bears and turns them into the Harlem Globetrotters within a couple of hours. I was amazed at his ability to take these strangers and build them into a team, and he had a funny sense of humor. He knew every one of his machines inside and out and could troubleshoot it himself. He was funny and made people feel like they were involved in something that was important to our company, and he all did it all very quickly. So at lunch, I sat down with Brett, who was a very young man, and I said, "So Brett, you ever think about becoming a formal leader at Johnsonville?" And he said, "No, they'd make me go back to school, and high school and I didn't get along so well." And so I did just what any learning professional would do. I said, "Oh, Brett, college as a growth school as an adult is different. They'll treat you like a customer. You can take the classes you like. You can, more in-person classes, online classes, whatever you like." And he said, "No, it takes too much time. It could take 3-4 years for an associate's degree, 5 or 6 years for me to get a part-time bachelor's degree." And I could have left it at that. I kind of lived up to my obligation to ask and then push a little. But I sensed that might be a moment that counts. So I kept on. I get to know him a little better. I said, "Brett, how old are you?" And he said, "I'm 22. I said, "You got a family?" He said, "I've been married a few months, and I just found out I'm going to be a dad." And that was my end. And I said, "So Brett, what do you care about? What do you want to do or be or become as a husband and father?" And he said, "Well, I grew up in very modest circumstances, and we don't need fancy stuff, but I always want to be able to provide for my family. Whatever we need, I want to be able to provide it." And I said, "Brett, do you realize you're going to be working for 45, probably 50 more years?" And Brett's eyes got as big as, because he hadn't thought about that. And I said, "You think maybe it won't be such a bad investment to spend 5%, maybe 10% of that time going back to school so you can earn some more money, get better jobs, do stuff you want to do, or do you want to do this for the rest of your life?" And I could tell he was thinking about it. And I was facilitating a class a couple of weeks later, and Brett was a student in that class. And I said, "Hey, Brett, how you doing?" And he got a big grin on his face, and he said, "I just signed up for the degree program that the local college brings right here to our company. And over the next 3 years, I would see Brett in our learning center. We have a 24/7 center where members can come and do their own personal work. It's got computers, it's got internet and coffee and that kind of thing. And so I'd see him in there doing his homework, and he'd be complaining without trying to be complaining about getting an A- instead of an A, or he'd be complaining about the injustice of his latest B+. And 3 years later, Brett graduated, and he graduated with great grades, and he's gone on to get a couple of great new roles here at our company. And Brett did all the work. All I was just a nudge and a chain of nudges that got Brett thinking in different ways. But I was right about lunch that day in the cafeteria. It was a moment that counts. And when you ask for how can teammates and leaders inspire each other, it's by being ready for those little moments that might seem insignificant, but you got to be looking for them, because when you succeed in moments that count, it can make a big difference in people's lives. I have a fundamental belief. There's a saying from an old 19th century British Royal Navy poem that says, "On the strength of one link in the cable dependeth the might of the chain. Who knows when thou may be tested? So live that thou bearest the strain." And all of us are links in these chains that link people together. We have to be ready to bear the strain in those moments that count. And I think life is a lot like George Bailey's in that great film, It's a Wonderful Life, that sort of cheesy sometimes to watch film, It's a Wonderful Life, that everybody watches at Christmas time.
Yeah.
But we never know. We never know how many lives we touch. But at the end of our life, that's what we'll look back on. Our legacy is the trail of successful people whose lives we touched in big and small ways throughout our lifetime. And so as a leader, that's just gold. That's what we're obligated to do as leaders, is to find ways to connect with people in ways that touch them so that they can charge their own motivation batteries.
Corey, thank you. That's exactly, your story touched me. I'm sure it touched some of our listeners, and it really drove the point home that as leaders, we have to, be ready. That's what you were talking about. You have to be ready for those moments, but delve a little deeper into who the people that we're leading are as people. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, the late Dr. Stephen Covey has a great model that he calls the whole person leadership. And, he says that we come to work because of our brain or our body, and some people, we hire them for both, a little bit of both. But he says that people have a spirit and a heart. They have something they care about, and they have stuff they want to become. And that you can only really be a great leader by knowing them as whole persons and never forgetting to touch on knowing what and helping them achieve what it is they want to become and do it in ways that it connects them to stuff they care about.
Yeah.
That's so true. But one of the key points that I think our listeners need to follow is that you took the time. No matter how busy you were, you took the time to sit down with that young gentleman and learn a little bit so that when you did offer some advice, it had merit and it related directly to him and his situation. And that, to me, is the strong point that I took away from that story.
Yeah, definitely.
Coaching is a contact sport, and we got to know our people. There's a great quote up here. I'm in Wisconsin, where we revere Vince Lombardi and our Packers, and he has a great phrase. He would greet the new players every year as they reported for camp, and he would say, "You know what? I don't have to like all my players and coaches, but I gotta love them. And believe me, gentlemen, my love will be relentless."
That's awesome.
And as coaches, we've really got to be in it for their success. And that's a tenet of if you read the classic servant leadership studies, it's, do those who are served or led, do they grow as people? And that's just really at the core of who I think, and certainly I know you guys believe that as leaders. It's one of our most important obligations.
100%. Definitely. Norm, did you want to, I don't know, do you think that we have time to delve into about Corey's speaking? I mean, Corey, could you tell us a little bit about where you've been? I know you've been speaking all over. Who have you spoken to?
Yeah, well, the book's been out for about a year, and I've been all over the United States: Dallas, Washington, Jacksonville, Minneapolis. Great. Speaking of different companies, I've been to Saudi Arabia. I'm going to India in December and Taiwan in October. So the book's really taken off, and I'm really blessed to have that opportunity. And
when we come back, we're going to tell the listeners a little bit more about your book. So when we come back on the other side of the break.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Norm Prevost, and I am joined with my co-host, Heather Hanson O'Neill. She is out there. Heather?
I'm out here. I'm way out here.
And we are talking today with Corey Bauck and talking about The Lens of Leadership, which is the book he wrote, and we're talking about leadership. And Corey, your book has some impressive testimonials. Ken Blanchard, the president of the Center for Creative Leadership, 2 U.S. governors, an ambassador to China, an NFL quarterback, the CEO of an indie racing league, president of Kraft Foods, the chief marketer at Aflac. Do you know these people?
Actually, I do, Norm. And that's when you're a nobody like me, or when you're relatively unknown, it really helps to have some globally recognized people say that you're worth listening to. And so, while I was writing my book, I put a lot of effort into reaching out to my network. I either worked for all of those people at some point, or worked with or for somebody who then ended up working for those people. So, I feel sometimes a little bit like Forrest Gump, that I've been in different places and just happened to rub elbows with some neat people, and they've been great role models, and they've just been so giving. And there's a chapter in my book called Nurturing Your Network, and that is, me living the idea of nurturing your network is what has kept me in touch with so many of those kinds of people, and led to their graciousness about putting their names on my book too.
That's great. What makes your book different?
There are a lot of leadership books out there. But the feedback I hear the most from people is that it's not theoretical. It's absolutely application based. Every chapter ends with a way to develop, very simple way for developing a plan to get better at that chapter's topic, whatever the topic of that chapter is. There's a simple way to, there's a list of resources, some books you could read, but there's also a way, there's an area where you say, hey, I need to network or connect or get some mentoring from this person who can help me with this particular chapter skill. And here are some ways that I can create experiences to put myself into where I'll get a chance to practice and get better at this, because, having the experience, being thrown into something and having to figure it out and practice the skills of leadership, that's the best way. That's why, the best leadership development programs in the world kind of throw people into situations where they just have to lead. That's the best way to do it, and it can't be passive; it's active. So first thing is it's application based. It's not theoretical. It's a blend of stories from great leaders, that they would recognize, say Colin Powell, for example. Then also from my 20 years of being in those very different, the things I learned from military leadership that the business world should understand, things I learned in academia that the professional world should understand, things I learned in business that people in not-for-profit can learn from. And then there's some tools that I've learned from the learning industry or from the development industry, some tools that can help leaders become better at developing others. So it's very tool-based, and it's the absolute best stuff from all of us. It's the best literature, the best application that's out there. So that's the feedback that I hear, that I can read a chapter and I can go to work and practice it tomorrow.
That's awesome. So our listeners should check out The Lens of Leadership by Corey Bauch. So Corey, you talk about leadership, you write about leadership. What's the state of leadership in American business today?
Boy, that's a wonderful question that you should ask all your guests, because here's what I've learned. No matter what research you look at, leadership makes a difference. When done well, there are people who that's what they do, is study the effectiveness of leadership organizations, think tanks and stuff. And, good leadership done well can make a difference. It makes a difference. Great leaders have more personal output than less effective leaders. They retain better. They retain people better. So they waste their human resources less, and effective leaders get more discretionary effort. They have higher engagement from those people that they retain. So leadership makes a difference. Unfortunately, only 2 out of 5, some studies will give it generously a 3 out of 5. Only 2 or 3 out of 5 leaders meet the threshold for being effective or highly effective. And that's not just bad, that's terrible. Companies, it is. So there's this great generational shift going on in American business where there's 25 million baby boomers leaving the workforce. And Generation X, I'm a Gen Xer, we're here to take over, right? We've taken our lumps, we've learned our lessons, we've earned roles in progressively increasing scope and scale. But unfortunately, our parents didn't have nearly as many babies as the baby boomers' parents. There's only 45 million Gen Xers. So there's this huge leadership gap that's going to get the millennials out there, God bless them, they're going to get sucked up into this leadership vacuum being created by the outgoing boomers. And millennials are awesome. They're great at connecting with each other and networking. They know technology better than any group. They've been raised to collaborate since the day they were born. They just won't have time to go through some of the iterations that Gen Xers did and boomers did, where you earn a little bit more scope and scale and you take your lumps there, and then you earn a promotion, then you learn some stuff there. They're going to get sucked up very quickly. And so the Harvard Business Review says that 70% of today's hypos, those high potential future leaders that we've identified and we're grooming and they're ready to go, 70% of them have a flaw in a critical leadership skill they'll need on day one of their first promotion. So that's not very promising. And then Lloyd's of London, the great global insurance.
We seem to have lost our guest, Corey, but our wonderful producer, Karina, is going to be getting him back on the line. So while we are waiting to get Corey back on the line, perhaps we can also just provide, because we know we usually ask this of our guests, but provide information for people to contact Corey. I believe his website that people would want to check out is corybauch.com. So I'm going to spell that since we've had some issues with his name today. It's www.corybauck.com. corybauch.com. So I do encourage you to go there, and there is information about the Lens of Leadership book, as well as some of the specific strategies that Corey has been sharing with us here today. So, Corey, are you back? No. Okay.
Oh no.
So,
our guest today is Corey Bauch. And folks can check him out, and his last name is spelled Bouck, and the book is The Lens of Leadership, Being the Leader Others Want to Follow. Corey, have you rejoined us?
Oh, actually, I see he's coming. He's coming back.
Yes, he's coming back in.
In the meantime, Norm, did you have any suggestions for any thoughts for our upcoming? We're going to do that debate between you and I on leadership over the next couple of weeks as well. I'm looking forward to that as well.
That's going to be a great show, and we are looking forward to a very good show next week. Be able to find out more of it on our website, the All Business Radio Network, and hopefully we can get Corey back at the end, before the end of the show. And again, Corey's been talking about leadership, and basically you need to serve, build, and inspire your teams.
Hello.
And yourself. And there's Corey.
Corey's back.
Hey.
Awesome. Great. So you know what? We were just promoting you like crazy, Corey. While you were missing in action for a couple of minutes, we told them about your website and your book. So is there anything that you would like to add to that we may not have shared with the listeners?
Well, I will just congratulate you on great adaptive leadership, and just for the taking and run of that flexibility is important. So I'll just mention that I'm really blessed to work. I work for Johnsonville Sausage, but they allow me to go out and I speak to companies and speak for money to national sales meetings and at conferences and stuff. And so if you're looking for somebody who can talk to your folks about these kind of things, you're looking for a keynoter, that'd be a great opportunity. And I'm just blessed that Johnsonville allows me to do that. Their mission is our mission is to unleash everybody's God-given talents, and they see this as a way to let me do that. And I come back, and the things I learn, I speak financial groups, CSX, the train company, spoke to them, spoke to a group in Saudi Arabia of telecom and financial. And so everything is customized so that I can talk their language and understand their leaders' pain points. I have hour-long conversations with CEOs and followers and leaders at these companies, so when I come in, it's not just a canned speech. Everything is customized and targeted at them and their business realities. So I appreciate the opportunity to mention that.
Oh, that's awesome. And you are really lucky that Johnsonville Sausage does believe in the philosophies that you're talking about, obviously serving, building, and inspiring, because that's what they're helping to cultivate with you as well. So that's really awesome. I want to ask you the question I ask of all of my guest experts, and it is relating to change. I mean, change is something that I'm asked to speak on all the time, so I like to get the input from each of our guest experts on, do you have any specific strategies, stories, or ideas wrapped around what you would recommend for our inspired team leaders in a changing world?
Change is everywhere, and it sounds like a cliche, but there's a chapter in my book called Navigating Change Like a Champion, and I'll tell you the best intellectual property I've ever seen, and the tool we use it here, and I recommend it everywhere I go. A book called Influencer. You can get that on Amazon. Influencer. It has several authors, but and the IP is owned by a company called Vital Smarts. They use a 6-source model, and I'm going to try to encapsulate a wonderful book in about a minute here. But and it has to do with when people need to adapt to change. There are 3 dimensions to it. There's the personal adaptation, there's the social influence, the influence of others, and then there's what they call structural impact, the impact of systems and policies and tools and machines and things like that. So there are 3 dimensions that change has to be successful across. And then in order to get change, there has to be motivation, and you have to increase motivation, and you have to increase ability. So those 3 dimensions and 2 factors creates what they call their 6-source model for change management. And it's very powerful. And what their research finds is when you work on solutions from 4 of the 6 modules, at least 4 of the 6 sources, you'll be 10 times more likely for your change to be successful over the long term. And, I don't have to tell you, Heather or Norm, that 60, 65, 70% of change management efforts fail. And so the book Influencer and the 6 sources model is a very powerful way to help people adapt to change and to make it very likely that your change issue will be successful, because it adapts on the people component, the non-human component, the impact we all have on each other socially, and then do we want to do it, and do we have the ability to do it?
Oh, Corey, thank you so much for that valuable resource for our listeners, The Influencer. We do encourage listeners to also go visit Corey's website, and that again is CoreyBouck.com, CoreyBouck.com. Check it out. Look for his Lens of Leadership book. Norm, any parting words in the last 7 seconds?
Corey, thank you very much. Heather,
It's been my pleasure.
thank you as always.
Thank you, Corey.